Right. Morning, girls. How are we all?
Hi.
Morning. Good.
And for everyone watching today, welcome. It's episode 6. Can you believe that? Like, where has the time gone?
That is crazy.
Absolutely mental, isn't it? I am so excited today because we, as you girlies know, but for anyone watching, we've got the amazing Zara Dawson joining us today. And Zara has had the most incredible journey, nothing short of extremely painful and harrowing. And I'd urge anyone that's watching this morning to grab yourself at least one packet of tissues. I have 2, and I've heard this story so many times, but it's just something that no mum should ever have to go through, especially after the most incredible infertility battle as well. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think that we need to get Zara on straight away, because I don't even think an hour this morning is going to be long enough to go through everything. So let's get Zara on. Hi, are you there?
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
Your kitchen. You have a lovely kitchen.
Oh, no.
Yeah, all the mess is out of sight, but the bit behind me looks show home ready.
That's because you've got cupboard space. Cupboard space is so key.
Oh my God, I know. But I've still filled them already. And I'm like, I've not got enough space. My husband's like, you just have to make do. You just have to cope.
Well, it's that classic line, isn't it? You will always fill the space that you have. You
Always.
keep getting bigger, but you'll just keep filling it.
Yeah. I have got some drawers that like just have like 2 bowls in it. So I think I need to like not be quite so luxurious with my space.
So Zara, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on today.
I'm so excited to speak to you all. I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm just, keep on moving forward, which is what we will have to do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So for anyone that's watching at home that doesn't know anything about your journey, just give us a little bit of an introduction and sort of how your whole parenting journey began.
So we started trying in about 2014. We didn't try for that long before we were referred for IVF, because I've got endometriosis and my sister had it, and she had a late term loss and lots of miscarriages. So I knew I was going to struggle. So I kind of pushed for a bit of intervention before, I was told to wait for a year or 2. And our first round went perfectly for what I thought. I wish 2021 Zara could go back to 2015 Zara and kind of give her a lesson in what to do and what not to do during IVF, because I just took the drugs I was told to take, went for a scan, didn't question anything. And, it sounds so dramatic, but it did nearly kill me because I got severe OHSS. And I knew nothing about this term. My clinic hadn't told me about this term. And because it was NHS funded cycle, I kind of felt, I was constantly told how lucky I was to have this NHS cycle. So I kind of just put up and shut up and went along with it and just constantly kept saying, oh, I can't breathe today, but I'm so lucky. And I just didn't question.
So lucky that I can't breathe.
I'm so lucky that I'm nearly dying here, but at least I got 7 embryos. That is honestly how I feel. Exactly. This is free. This is just a freebie. And they did say to me, the first cycle is very trial and error. Don't expect for it to work, and we'll kind of see how you react to the drugs. So I went into it thinking, okay, so I won't get a baby out of the first one, but we'll, see how I go with the drugs. And then of course I did fall pregnant. They should never have put the embryo back in. I know that now. And because once you have the embryo put back in, if you get pregnant, it exasperates the symptoms of OHSS. So the HCG hormone in your blood makes it all 10 times worse. So I think it was about a week after transfer that I woke up. I actually went for acupuncture at Zeta West. And the acupuncturist went to me really delicately. She went, how are you feeling? She felt my pulse. And I said, yeah, I'm not I'm not feeling too bad. I just can't breathe very well. And she said, okay, I'm not going to do the treatment on you, but I'd like you just to go to A&E really calmly. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm absolutely fine. This must be normal. And woke up the next day, and literally, I described it as I felt I had an elephant sitting on my chest. I just couldn't breathe. So I went to my clinic, and they scanned me, and they said, yeah, your ovaries have started to kind of leak fluid, and you have fluid all under your lungs, which is why you can't breathe. And again, I was like, oh, well, this is just how it is then. And there was no major urgency on their part, really. Again, I had so much kind of bad care that I get angry with myself now for not sticking up for myself more. And that is just my one bit of advice, is just be your own advocate, because no one else is going to do that for you. But yeah, I just went along with it, and I then got admitted into hospital. And at this point, I didn't even know I was pregnant. And they said, oh, the good news is this likely means that you're pregnant. The bad news is you may lose the baby because you have such severe OHSS. So again, you're like, okay, so what do I feel? Am I to feel joy that my cycle has worked, or am I to not feel anything because I'm probably going to lose this? I'd never been pregnant before. So the whole thing was quite daunting, as it is, regardless if you've done IVF or not. And they just admitted me straight to hospital. And at this point, I'd told nobody that we'd done IVF. So I hadn't told my parents, my sister, my brother, nobody. And they said to me, you are very, very unwell. And I remember calling my mum and saying, I've been put into hospital for endometriosis. I thought, I'm not going to tell her until she gets here. I think every female has that dream of when you tell your parents, you want to tell them, you want to see the joy. And I remember her walking into the ward, and it was the early pregnancy and gynae ward. And she joked, she went, oh, you're not pregnant, are you? And I went, yeah, I am. And I've done IVF, and it's likely I'm not going to keep the pregnancy. And it was just this massive kind of explosion of emotion. I just didn't know how to feel. And when I look back now, I think that was the turning point of where my postnatal depression started. I mean, I never had it to the extent where I got help for it, but I have counselling every other week, because I went through so much trauma. And it was at that point that it started, that nothing was managed correctly. I wasn't cared for correctly. Nobody ever asked how I felt, ever, not once. Nobody said, are you scared? It's going to be all right. Or if it isn't all right, we're going to help you and we're going to look after you. So from that day, the isolation for me just came full force, and it was petrifying. Yeah.
OHSS is horrendous, isn't it? Yeah, so I was just going to say, Sara, I know you've...
I feel like Zara's just told my story, because that's what happened to you happened to me. And I've told the girls this before. The night, because I went into A&E at like 3 a.m. Again, I tried to ignore all this, all the horrible pain that I was in, and the breathing. When you just said you had an elephant on your chest, I thought, my God, I know what that. I know. And then it was like 2 a.m. My husband was like, "We are going now." And there was a nurse I was put in this OAP ward because there was no other beds. And this nurse, who had no clue, when I said to her, but I've had 2 embryos put back in, she said they'll probably just take them back out. So, so it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sat in a OAP ward with someone telling me that I've gone through all of this for nothing, and they're going to take my embryos out. I mean, and then I was just...
I can't believe how insensitive some of these professionals are with the words and the phrases that they use. Like the oh, you should be lucky. I mean, I've touched upon that a couple of times. It absolutely infuriates me, the way that certain aspects of our journey are referred to as lucky I can't have kids, like lucky I need intervention. That infuriates me to begin with. But the fact that these professionals are saying things like, we're going to take your embryos out, or without even knowing that that's actually if and what they're going to do, they're just throwing throwaway comments that actually, as if it's just, it is what it is, and you'll just deal with whatever I choose to say. I think it's disgraceful. I really genuinely do.
Agree.
Zara,
but not like you girls. Nothing. I mean, and I was poorly. I mean, Zara, I don't know what would have happened if it weren't for you, because you were the one who made me go to the hospital. You were the one who were like, get out of bed and get to the hospital now. And she would literally, my last cycle, message me like, have you spoken to your consultant yet? What's your consultant said? How are you feeling? She was like my on-call doctor.
I know.
How crazy is it that we all are, none of us are medically trained. We're all self-taught because of what we've been through, and we are the ones that are having to advise each other and save each other's life. Let's be honest, let's be real. Zara, you're saving Jade's life in giving her that kind of advice, and you're paying the professionals so much money. Surely that comes within their job description to just keep you alive and care for your basic needs. It's crazy that, lovely that we can do this for each other, but crazy that we have to do this for each other because the systems and the professionals are letting us down.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that it had changed since I did my cycle, but during about 2 months ago now, I had a woman contact me, and she said she was at the same clinic I went to, which, by the way, is a very renowned clinic, and it's meant to be incredible, and it's one of the best hospitals in the world. That's kind of what it's billed as. And they had collected 38 eggs from this woman. Okay, 38 eggs. And she Instagrammed me, and she was like, I just know you've been through HSS. I just wondered, how normal is it that you can't really, you're not meant to be able to breathe very well? I was like, that's not normal. That's not normal.
Yeah.
Get to A&E, because then, I think they're kind of covering their tracks a bit, because they should not be collecting that many eggs.
No.
Do you not think in some respects, because of the situation we're in, because if you can't have a baby, you're going to do anything and everything you can to have one, and in some respects you are in a, I suppose, vulnerable position. Like you were saying, the professionals were saying, take these medications, do this and do that, and I've been exactly the same. I haven't had OHSS, but I've had moments where I thought, this isn't working. I need to listen to my body and stop listening to just a bit of a faceless professional telling me this is the way, because I myself feel in my body that this isn't working, and it obviously didn't, because I've not had a successful cycle yet. I do think we're sort of in that a bit of a vulnerable position, in that you're going to do anything that a medical profession tells you, because you are holding out so much hope that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, why would we not listen to them?
I felt like that back in 2015 when I did my first cycle, and I've done 6 transfers, and transfer 4, 5 and 6, I would take no crap. Like, they said something, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And who gives a damn if they think you're a pain in the ass patient? Yeah. Who gives a damn? Because I was the one coming home at night, crying myself to sleep because I'd lost yet another baby. A1, I was just a number to them.
Yeah.
So you have to advocate for yourself. You have to just push. Even if they think you're being a pain, who cares?
I think it takes so long to get there, though, doesn't it? Because
it takes experience.
Yeah, I'm only just getting there now, where I'm saying, no, I'm not just doing that same protocol again. I'm not just doing it again. Trying the same things over and over.
You've got to learn what works for you, haven't you? You've got to learn what your body is saying and learn to listen to your body to be able to tell the professionals no. Because, I mean, in the beginning, when you're not aware or you don't have that kind of experience, why would you not take their advice? Why would you not listen to them? So only when, and it's crap, but only when their advice doesn't work, or only when you get to a stage where you think, well, actually, you're not really that clued up on what you're talking about, are you then in a position to challenge them? And it's rubbish that the trust isn't there. You have to get to a stage where you no longer trust them to feel like you can back yourself, and that's crap. That's really poor.
That's why things like you girls are doing is just invaluable, because women can talk. And 2015, I think there was a few Twitter groups, but the support wasn't there like it is now at all. But also, you can't taint all consultants with the same brush. The consultant I went to for my last transfer, which didn't work, but I'll get to that in a bit, He is phenomenal. He's at the Evewell Clinic, and I would not hesitate for 1 second if I were to ever do another cycle, which I'm not, but if I were, I would go there, because he listened to me. He gave me a protocol, and I went, I don't want to do that drug because it didn't make me feel good, and I'd like to try steroids. And he was like, okay, that's not going to harm you. Let's have a go with your you know, he was so open to ideas. Whereas when I was at my first clinic, she
validated your feelings, didn't he?
Validated my feelings. And he also said, I said to him, you know, I'm sorry if I'm being, he said, you're not being a pain. You are a patient who is fighting for what you really bloody want, and that is another baby. And to me, that shows that, you know, you are fighting for yourself, and that's great.
And can I also just make a point that we're paying for this treatment? So, you know, I mean, in what planet do you walk into a shop to make a purchase or to buy a product, and that shop advisor or retail assistant would dare say, well, no, actually, I'm not going to let you buy that one. You're going to buy this one with your own hard-earned cash. I'm going to make you buy this, and you will do as you're told, and you will do what I say. In what world is that acceptable? You know, as sensitive as it may sound, we are paying for a service. That's what.
See, at first I wasn't paying. I was on the NHS, and I felt like I should be grateful for whatever I got.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
That's still not.
I still felt like
that's the difficulty of it. Yeah, you feel like you should be grateful, because I know there's lots and lots of people that don't get any treatment on the NHS, and I was getting treatment, but it wasn't working for me. And I wasn't having a good experience, but it was just keep holding on because you're lucky to have this. And that makes it difficult. I think now that I am paying, I do feel braver to say, no, actually, I'm not going to do that. Whereas before I maybe didn't.
See, we didn't get any funding at all. So from a person that, you know, you mentioned that some people don't get any funding and you felt like you should just be grateful. From me to you in that position, I would say, number one, that's not the case at all. It isn't about being grateful, but also to make the funding worthy of what is right for you, and to make sure that you have the experience that's meant to be from the funded cycle, and kind of take everything from it that you possibly can. We've got to be in positions to be able to speak up for what we need or feel or want, because otherwise it's kind of irrelevant whether you're getting funded or not, because you're being funded but for a cycle that's not working for you, so you may as well not be funded.
Well, exactly. That's why I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
But I think the key here is because if anyone is watching this and they haven't actually started IVF yet, they might suddenly feel really overwhelmed and terrified, because only that you want to trust your doctor, you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And so I think it's really important just to remind people, don't doubt your doctor, trust in your doctor, but just go armed with some questions. So before you start your treatment, understand what is a protocol. And just have a look down. So you've just got, okay, well, I understand what that means now. Right. Okay. So then when your doctor is, because, you know, when you go for that first consultation, all you hear is wah, wah, wah. And then you're like, okay, so when am I be pregnant? When am I going to be pregnant? So when's that baby going to be due? Exactly. Yeah. So if you just do your homework, do your revision as though you were going in to do an exam, and then just have that confidence to not necessarily doubt your doctor, but to be able to have a conversation with your doctor.
Yeah. Know that not being able to breathe is not normal after IVF. Don't know what is right, and don't question your body. Because this is what I really wanted to touch on from stemming talking about the OHSS as well, which is something that's so important, because my clinic was still talking to me. I had my retrieval on the Friday, and as soon as the anaesthetic wore off, I was in horrific pain, and I was speaking to you when over the weekend, Zara, and I was in such a bad way. And my consultant, even when I was admitted to hospital, she came around and said, well, we could just potentially do a transfer on the Friday. And this is what I want to talk about, is like the what can happen and what did happen after you had you had your embryos transferred with OHSS and you were poorly.
Yeah.
What can happen?
So the day of transfer, I was just so excited to get there, and they said, and we're going to transfer 1 because of my age. I was only 32, and we're going to freeze 6. So the day of transfer, she scanned me and she said, oh, you are showing signs of OHSS. And then did the transfer. Now I know that was the wrong thing to do. But she did the transfer. And then symptoms started after a few days, the not breathing. When I was then taken into hospital, they monitored me. So they monitored my urine output and then kept scanning me after every week to see how much fluid I had in my body. And it was literally like, then a nurse would take me to the toilet. I had to pee in a pot. She would measure that pot, see how many mils I'd peed out, and then scan me again. And the whole weekend, they said, bearing in mind, I hadn't even had a scan at this point. It was just my bloods that were showing as pregnant. And they said, oh, we'll scan you. And then the weekend came and they scanned and they found the sac. Then they scanned 2 days later and found the yolk. The whole process you go through before you see that heartbeat. But the whole weekend, they kept saying, we think we are going to have to drain the fluid out, which would be inserting a tube and draining the fluid out, which I've since learned is a pretty horrific experience. I didn't have to have that. I think I should have done, because I had issues throughout my whole pregnancy. I was in hospital for over 3 months during my pregnancy, and that was flipping petrifying.
And that was due to the OHSS?
Well, it was the OHSS, which then caused cardiac issues. Yeah. Jackson then blocked my kidney by 98%, so only 1 kidney was working. So my right kidney had filled up with urine. I kept getting this itch for months, and I was like, I'm itchy. And they kept saying, they kept giving me Piriton. So I was in hospital on a morphine drip for this pain from OHSS and lots of other things. And they kept giving me Piriton. And it was only, I think I was about 29 weeks when they figured out my blooming kidney was blocked. So the itch was the urine, which has turned toxic. So they said to me, we're going to put a stent. Oh, and then they said, we've got bad news. We're having to wean you off of the morphine because we're frightened the baby's getting addicted to it. So I was like, okay, I'm in horrific pain, and you're now going to take my morphine away. I mean, I probably was a bit addicted to it because I was like, I need my morphine. It was the only thing that meant I could function. And I've got a blooming high pain threshold. I think if you live with endo, you are used to severe pain, but it did me in. And they said, we're going to pop a stent in your back tomorrow morning, drain your kidney, but you will have this stent during birth and for 6 weeks afterwards, and we'll then try and reverse it. We'll then try and get the stent out. So I was really naughty. I just felt I was likely to go into labour soon. And I was in hospital already again. I snuck into the kitchen at 6 o'clock the morning of the surgery and ate a bowl of Alpen so they couldn't operate on me. I mean, this is how out of my mind I was. Mm-hmm. That pregnancy did weird things to me, and I was just not thinking straight. And again, nobody said, are you all right? Because you're a little bit mental. Nobody said it to me. They just let me carry on. But yeah,
was you just doing everything to sort of maintain your pregnancy and keep your baby? So you was putting yourself secondary, or had you even gone beyond that point?
I had no doubt that I wasn't going to come home with a baby. I had no doubt. I was like, I'm going to lose him. I'd given up, and it's awful. It makes me sad now, but I had given up. So basically the OHS started at about 7 weeks. I woke up with the most horrendous pain. They rushed me in by ambulance. They questioned an ectopic, and I said, it's not, because I've seen a baby in the right place. And they sent me home after the pain died off after about 10 hours. That then happened again 4 other times. But on the 3rd time, I was 10 weeks pregnant, and they rushed me in, and I was just screaming. I mean, I was screaming in pain. I mean, having given birth now, I can wholeheartedly say it made childbirth look like a bloody walk in the park on a sunny day. It's basically your contraction level pain, but for 10 hours solid with no give up. And the third time I was rushed in by ambulance, I was struggling. My heart was struggling and my blood pressure crashed. And they said to Lex, we need to operate. You are likely going to lose the baby. But if we don't operate, it's likely Zara won't be here in the morning. And it was at that moment that I had to just think this IVF's been for nothing. And I'll never forget. I mean, I was in so much pain, though. I was begging them to operate. And I said, please try not to make me lose this baby. I knew at the same time, they will always put the mother before the baby when you're that early on. And I'll just never forget them putting me to sleep and thinking this might be the only time I'm ever pregnant in my life. And this is how I lose him. And it was a real pull for me, because you know, I'm not saying when you fall pregnant naturally you want your baby any less than people who go through IVF, but you are prepared to go through so bloody much to get that baby with IVF. And to have it snatched away like that, I was so angry. And I just kept thinking, if you're going to make me lose him this way, why didn't you just let me miscarry early on? You know, why did you make me go through these weeks of pain? And I mean, poor Lex, when they took me down to surgery, you know, he'd just been told that we would likely lose the baby. And if they didn't operate, he would likely lose me. And he just said he just walked home and his whole body felt numb. And he said he just didn't know when he returned to the hospital whether he'd have anything there. And that's really tough. When we decided to then try again for our second, that was always in the back of his mind that, you know, it's like a marathon. You have to gear yourself up and you have no idea what lies the other side. And it's scary. It's really scary.
So after you had your op, after you had your op, what happened then, obviously, when you came back round and how did the op go?
The op went fine. Basically, my ovary your ovaries are meant to be like 3 to 5 centimeters. Mine had swollen to 15. And then as they had shrunk to 13.5, they had room to twist because of the weight. They're like a ball on a stem. Yeah. So the weight had spun it round and then it had got wedged between my other organs. So it couldn't untwist. And it had spun round 3 times. So they pierced both ovary, they untwisted it and they drained all, you know, all the fluid that they could. And when I came back round, they said, we're going to bring a sonographer to your bedside and see if we can find a heartbeat. And it was just the most petrifying moment. And because I'd recently come round from the anaesthetic, you know, when you are put to sleep, you come round and your eyesight's a bit funny and I could not see a heartbeat. And they kept saying to me, there's the heartbeat. And I got a bit hysterical. I kept saying, you're lying to me. I can't see. I was so traumatized. But again, no one said you're struggling a bit here. Lex was there and my mum had rushed down again, bless her heart. And even they were saying we can see a heartbeat. And I just felt, you're lying to me. You're lying to me because I'm not very well. You're just trying to protect me. But I did, you know, I don't know how. I think I sent you that picture, Jade, of when I'd had my surgery. And I laid there and my stomach's swollen from being pregnant. And, you know, it's then got incisions in it where they've had to go in. And I was such a mess. I mean, I don't know how my son survived that. Neither do any of the consultants at all. They've always said that to me. They said, we don't know how he withstood that.
Realistically though, Zara, this was just the start of the pain for you though, wasn't it? It's not like Joanna got any.
No, it didn't. I mean, and that happened, the torsion happened another 2 times after that. And it happened at 24 weeks. And they said, if we operate, we have to deliver. And the baby will be very poorly at 24 weeks if he survives. So it was, again, they let me stay in that pain for 10, 11 hours on morphine. Bearing in mind, we all worry about taking a bloody paracetamol when we're pregnant. We worry, you know, shouldn't take, I mean, Jesus, you know, those babies can withstand more than we think. That's for sure. And then it was just issue after issue. And I got cardiac issues. I had kidney issues. I then got a placenta issue. I went into labor at 28 weeks. And they gave me a steroid jab and some other medication, which managed to hold it off. And then when I was 35 and a bit weeks, I was in hospital again. I was so depressed. I was so freaking depressed. I just laid in that hospital bed for weeks and weeks on my own. And it went from an early pregnancy and gynae ward, and then it went to a birth ward. And I'd just hear women around me all night and day giving birth. And I just laid there thinking, I'm not going to get to that. I know I'm not. I'm not going to get to that. I didn't allow myself. I didn't. Pardon?
You had to stay on a labour ward with women labouring their babies, and it was so uncertain as to whether you'd have your baby or not. Yeah. I thought that was a thing of years ago. I thought that was something that I did with women that were suffering like potential loss, and I'm talking years ago. Like it was changing.
I think it was from 18 weeks they popped you on the ward with, heavily pregnant women who are waiting for a C-section or to give birth, and it was awful. And I heard no, just in a bay, and even that made me go out of my mind, just being in a bay. And they wouldn't let you have your curtains closed during the day. They like it all to be open. And I remember one day I said, I'm struggling, please close my curtains. And she said, pull yourself together. I was like, oh my God, I'm struggling. I was really struggling.
You've just had the most horrific experience from people. It's like, where's anybody's compassion towards what you're going through?
But you know what? If I worried about what happened prior to birth, what I've faced on postnatal, which I hear time and time and time again, was just awful. I went into labour. I was in hospital. I went to breakfast. I mean, it was like being in a prison. I was there so long. You queue up with your little tray and you go and get your breakfast. And I came over unwell. So I went back to my bed and called the buzzer, and the consultant came and she said, I'm just going to get you checked out by your consultant. And when they checked me to see if, my cervix had started to open. By the way, I was having contractions from about 18 weeks constantly, and they kept hooking me up to a monitor and watching them. It wasn't like in my mind, they'd watch them and then they'd go a bit. And then, so I was just in so much pain. And when they finally decided to see if my cervix was opening at all with these contractions, I felt a pop and I thought my waters had broken, and it was blood. There was so much blood. And they had no idea where it had come. They still don't know to this day where it had come from, what had caused it. But they said, we have to induce you today. They knew that Jax was going to be small and maybe a bit unwell. He was a month early, which isn't huge in the grand scheme of things, but he'd had a tough time. And the labour went fine. As soon as they'd popped my waters, my kidney pain disappeared. It was euphoric because the pressure had just gone. And it was the labour, it was fine. I was induced. The pain was pretty strong, but again, compared to torsion, I was like, I can do this. This is fine. I had an epidural, which didn't work. They could not numb me. They tried to place it 3 times. They just couldn't numb me. So they gave up on that. And Jax came and seemingly was fine to start with, but they had let him, I found out afterwards, be in cardiac distress for 36 minutes, which explains that why he was pulled out so quickly by ventouse, which is the sucker on their head. And I had the most horrendous tear. I mean, again, no one warned me about that. Lex said he just remembers them placing the baby on my chest and the consultant going, get me tissue, and just stuffing that hard blue hospital tissue to try and stem the bleeding. And they were going, get a surgery ready, get a theatre ready, get the theatre ready. But of course, I was like, I've got my baby. Couldn't feel anything because the happiness just overwhelms you, doesn't it? Yeah. And I actually watched my birth video not long ago. I was changing my phone over, and you can just watch it and you can see the panic in their faces. They were like, okay, she's in trouble. And I went to theatre. I was there for hours. I kept, passing in and out of consciousness on the table because I just lost blood. I'd been awake for hours. I'd just given birth to a baby. And it was just a really bad end to a horrendous pregnancy. And I made myself pay for that. I felt it was my, you know, I felt, to me, bearing in mind at this point I still hadn't bought one baby thing, because I was like, he ain't coming home with me. And if I have nothing at home that will remind me of him, it will be easier to grieve. That's how I thought. And I honestly did, hand on heart. And I think part of it is because I delivered my sister's baby and he died in my hands. And I think I definitely played a part in it. And I watched her grieve, and I just thought, if you don't have anything, don't have one thing in the house that will remind you of what you've been through. And then, yeah, I mean, the birth was horrendous. I came back round and he was with me for about, 10 minutes. And then he was rushed to intensive care. He couldn't breathe anymore. So he was on a breathing machine, and he had blood sugar issue, which he still has to this day. It's nothing to worry about though. But I remember I was in a wheelchair for 5 days, and I remember Lex wheeling me into him, because they want you to try and breastfeed and build up a bond. Because I also was cold. I was like, I don't really want to hold him. Don't want him near me. I just had this wall that I'd built. And I think when we wanted to try again for a second, I really wanted that experience of what it must feel like to give birth, and just really want that baby, because my fear wouldn't let me feel anything at all. And I remember going to see him for the first time in NICU, and he's laying there with all the tubes. I couldn't touch him. And I said to the consultant, he's going to be all right though, isn't he? And the consultant said, we will do everything we can. And I thought, what do you mean? I was holding him a little while ago. I was holding him and he was fine. And again, it was that switch of, I just allow myself to think, bloody hell, I've got a baby. I'm going to go home with a baby. And then again, that bit of news. And it was just a constant, just knocking me down. Anytime I dared feel a tiny bit of hope, I just got knocked down. And I think when we went for our second, because of what happened, I think it hit me so much harder, because I thought nothing can be as bad as what I went through with Jax. And then obviously I didn't even get to bring my second son home. Sorry to cry.
Don't apologise. I don't think any of us even know like where to go from there, to be honest.
I have never, ever, ever heard anyone's journey so epic,
painful,
dramatic and painful. And
it's funny because it only ever hits me when I talk about it. You just get, you just go, oh yeah, I went through that. Yeah, that was tough. And then when you talk about it and you list it, I'm like, how the hell did I get through that? I don't think I could do that again. And I also said to Lex, it's funny because obviously I have experienced termination, which, it's an awful thing to say, but I did end my baby's life. And I have no doubt that if they'd said to me at 10 weeks pregnant, this is what is in store for you for the next 7 months, I would have said, I can't do it. I can't do that. I can't be rushed in by ambulance and nearly lose my life and, have heart issues and kidney issues and live on a morphine drip and be on my own. I just used to lay in my bed in hospital and stare out the window. And just, I used to have a visitor every now and again, but my mum lives in Norfolk, so she couldn't be with me all the time. But it was just the most lonely time. My mates became the midwives.
How long were you then both in hospital for?
2 weeks. But again, it was, I went back to my room that night on a ward, and every other mum had that baby beside her bed, and I had nothing. And they even left the cot there, and I said, take that cot away. Like, I don't want to see an empty cot by my bed. That's not fair. I was like, think about what you're doing here. And I think it was at that point that I really started to stand up for myself. And question of
left to lose. Like
I'd flipped. I was angry. I was angry at what I'd been through. I was angry with myself that I couldn't even give my son a decent birth. I was angry that I couldn't protect him enough to not have him go into intensive care. All these things now, I know I couldn't have done anything about that. But at the time, You're a new mum. Your hormones are going crazy. And then you've got all this. And I remember one night Lex wheeled me into NICU to go and do a feed. And the woman got really arsey that she had to get up and let me in.
God.
And she went, yes, at 2 a.m, yes. I went, I'm here to breastfeed. And she was like, and it's those tiny things that then made me, I got fearful. I was like, oh my God, I've got to feed again in 3 hours and she's going to do the same to me. I then got fearful. And the treatment postnatally, and again, I've heard this so many times, is just wrong. I know they're understaffed, underpaid, overworked. But still, you're in that job. Do that job properly, because the tiniest flippin' comment for you could change the way that woman can be a mother. It's so vital and fundamental.
There is so much that is said, like I think Jodie touched on it earlier, that it's just not said how it should be said. And I don't know if it's because they just do this job day in and day out and it's a bit flippant, like you said earlier. There is there's even medical terms that are used medically that are just so insensitive and just need to be removed. It's just detrimental to your mental health in that moment, isn't it? It really
Can I
is.
just take a moment, Zara, just to, and I don't want to patronise you, I really don't want to patronise you, but you are incredible. You are so unbelievably incredible. And I just wanted to make sure that I said it to you.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. But I did nothing that any of us would have done. You just get on with it, don't you? You get on with whatever you're faced with. And, you do.
Can you remember? Can you remember what it was like when you left?
Yeah, I mean, it was 9 o'clock at night on a freezing February evening. My baby had just come out of intensive care with breathing issues, and they sent us off into the night in like sub-zero temperatures. Again, you're like, what were you doing? He had very bad jaundice, so when he did reach my bedside, he was on what they call a billy blanket, which is the purple light to kind of bring the levels down. For 5 days. And when they finally discharged us, part of me was just so excited to get out of that hospital. I'd been there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And living in just imagine how small those bays are. And that's all I owned, just everything in that bay. That was my home. And when we left, it just felt weird. And we got home and I instantly I just didn't connect. I just didn't connect, which I feel awful about now because, my God, I'm obsessed with him. But at the time...
Do you reckon that's like a coping technique, an inbuilt coping technique that, none of us really want to have?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, and I think there were so many times, even after he was born, where I feared losing him. I mean, genuinely did fear losing him. But I was so scared to create that connection because I kept saying it will be harder when he's not here. Like even when he was with me and born and home, I kept thinking it will be harder. If you create this connection now, you're making a rod for your own back. I mean, it's awful.
It's sad. Really sad that you had to.
There's so many opportunities there where you should have been offered support, though.
Yeah.
Someone professionally should have. This, just from looking at your file and sort of said, look at everything she's been through. She could never be in a sound mind right now because otherwise she wouldn't still be here doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
So even after you left the hospital and you had your baby and you were both deemed okay, did anyone ever, anywhere, health visitor, midwife, anyone offer you any support or any counselling or anything?
No one professional. Luckily, I had a friend, Denise Welsh, who, I spoke with on Loose Women. She suffered from horrific mental health after her son Matty was born. And she came around one day and just said to Lex, she needs to go to the doctors. She needs to go. And as a new dad, you're like, no, it's just baby. They don't know what to look for. They just don't. Nobody knows what is normal. I wasn't eating, wasn't drinking. I'd go 2 days with no water and then wonder why I didn't have any milk. I had no milk. I would sit up expressing. I'd feed Jax Then I'd sit up expressing till the next feed, and then I'd feed him again. I did not sleep. I did not sleep. And my body had been through so much trauma that they did say to me, we don't know if you'll be able to breastfeed because your body might just shut down. And it did, but I was so determined. I was like, nah, I am breastfeeding. If I'm going to do one thing right, I mean, Jesus, if I had my time again, you know, he'd refuse 3-4 feeds and I'd stop, he'd be on the bottle. Because the day I fully switched to the bottle at 16 weeks was the day I felt I truly became a mum.
Oh, at 16 weeks? So you persevered for 4 months, basically?
Yeah, I tortured myself. Absolutely.
It's so hard when you can produce milk and you've not been through that. I breastfed for 16 weeks and it was the hardest thing ever. And I didn't not a patch on what you've been through. And I kind of feel like IVF, 2 rounds of IVF, whatever, like what you go through. I don't even feel like I've got a right to even feel.
Oh, stop it. We all do. No, it's all, it's, you know.
It's post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
You haven't been.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like soldiers that go to war, right? With these soldiers that go to war who experience trauma, right? They are sent to decompression camps before they come home. Because the authorities know that you can't go through that trauma and then continue doing your shopping and putting the biscuits in the biscuit jar, and because they know that you can't go from one extreme to the other.
You can't function.
And you're going through all of that, and then you're just expected to just pick up and on you go. Yeah.
And I did. I felt to myself, I was like, come on, look how lucky you are. After what you've been through and you've got him, you're lucky. Pull yourself together. And and I started counselling. Luckily, someone suggested Petals counselling, and I didn't want to start. And I said, I'm going to do one session. If I don't like her, I'm not doing it again. I mean, Jesus, she was my lifeline. When we lost our second son, she was the one that fought for me to get that termination in a hospital. And I was so lucky and fortunate to connect with her. And I still have counselling. Every other week I have counselling, and I can't be without it. Some days we don't even touch on baby stuff. We just talk, or I'll go, do you know what? Something's worrying me. It's nothing to do with that. But they help you process it in a way that none of your family or friends could, because they're too close to you. You need that outside person who is never going to judge you. I mean, God, some of the crap I've told her, she doesn't judge me. She helps me process things and helps me work through it.
So you're going to have to give me the link for her information.
Oh, I will. Absolutely.
In here, because she sounds like a real life angel. And 2018 is when you started your frozen cycle for what turned into your pregnancy with your little boy Jesse. How let's just start with the IVF. How was the frozen cycle for you in comparison to your fresh cycle?
Oh my God, it was so easy. I didn't do any drugs, so it was a natural. I literally peed on a stick at home, an ovulation stick, called them when it was positive, and I went in 5 days later for a transfer. I mean, it was a dream. It was amazing. And I knew after about 3 days that it worked. I always know when I'm pregnant about 3-4 days after transfer. And I knew I was pregnant, and my levels were very high. They questioned twins. My sister's got twins, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't cope with twins. I just can't. I know you have as well, Sara. I was like, I can't barely cope with one. I can't cope with 3. And they scanned me, found nothing. So instantly said, we think it's an ectopic because your levels you would see something on a scan now. Again, proof that textbooks aren't always right, because I had levels of 3,000-4,000, and you should be able to see something at, they say, 1,000, 1,500, when you have your beta done. And they could see nothing. So they scanned me 4 days on the trot, and they said, we'll scan you tomorrow. If we see nothing, we're pulling you in for surgery on Saturday. So I was like, oh, here we go again. And I went for that scan on the Friday, and it took 2 consultants, but the second consultant went, I can see something. He said, I don't know yet if it's a sac, but I can see something, and I'm happy for you to go home for the weekend and come back on Monday. So that whole weekend, I was just thinking, oh my God, is this going to be awful again? Is this just going to be awful? Anyway, it was fine. Everything was great. I was so nauseous I couldn't lift my head off the pillow, and loved every second of it. And everything was perfect. I was having weekly scans because of what I'd been through. They wanted to keep a close eye on me, and he looked perfect on the scans, waving.
Sara, just before we jump into the next bit, I just want to ask, how was it gearing yourself up for, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I just, after everything you went through with Jax, how did you manage to get yourself to a point where you were like, actually, I'm ready to have a frozen transfer, we're ready to potentially go through a load of shit again?
Well, I wasn't ready at all. I don't think I'll have ever been ready, but I was so bloody determined to give Jax a sibling. And that's all that kept me going. I was thinking, you're never going to be ready. It's like when you first decide to have a baby. Yeah. You're never fully ready because no one can prepare you. But to be honest, I just kept thinking, and it's the way I sold it to Lex. He was very like, oh, I just, you know, I'm scared. And I was like, Lex, look what we went through the first time. Nothing can be that bad. And I think back to the person who said that, and I was like, God, you had no idea what was coming to you.
Yeah.
You had no idea. And to be honest, before I went through that, I only ever expected with IVF, I only ever expected you either had a failed cycle or a miscarriage. I never knew you could lose a baby another way. I just didn't know. And I feel stupid. I think I was educated, like we all do. We all do our research. I was educated, and I did not know that you could ever be faced with a decision to terminate a pregnancy of a live baby. I had no idea.
So what had to tell us about the scan where that basically changed your life forever?
So I'd been through a lot of scans. I was a good few months in. I've never said how far because I don't know. I just haven't. It's something that I like Lex and I to just know. Also, I think when I say that, people can imagine how developed the baby is. Do you know what I mean? It's funny. It's like, I'm just going to keep that. But I was a good few months in, and we went for the scan, and she said, she was chatting to us, and she said, oh yeah, he looks great. She said he looks great, and sent me out, and I was waiting for a nurse to give me some anti-sickness meds. So I sent Lex down to our friend was waiting with Jax, and then she called me back in. And my first thought was, oh, she forgot to give me a scan picture, because she did. Now I know why. But that was my first thought. So I kind of went in all happy, and she sat me down, and she didn't get eye contact with me at all. And she said, actually, I found something on the scan. It may close up, but it may not. We just don't know. Come back in 2 weeks. And it's one of those moments where you just feel the blood drain from your body. And I thought my heart was going to burst out of my chest. And in that second, I knew I would not be bringing him home. I knew.
You text your mum, didn't you, at the scan, at the start of the scan?
Yeah, I texted her and said, everything looks great. He's waving and kicking away. And then I texted her minutes later and just said they found something. And they made me wait for 8 hours at the early pregnancy unit because I demanded to see someone. I said, I'm not going home. I'm not waiting 2 weeks. I'm not doing that. You know, I've been through enough crap to know when to now stand up for myself. You are not sending me home, having told me that for 2 weeks. So I obviously text Lex and said they found something, which again, he was like, they didn't. You must have just got that wrong. They did. I was just with you in that scan and they said he's fine. And he went home with Jax, and I sat there and I Googled for 8 hours. And I just kept seeing body stalk anomaly, which is when a baby's body doesn't close and some of the organs can be outside. And I just kept seeing the word termination. And I was like, what is this word? So I looked into that, and it hit me that some women are faced with the horrific decision to end their baby's life. Like, that's on you. You stop that heartbeat. That's on you. And I knew that's what it was going to come to. I knew it. And again, I kept thinking, please let me miscarry. Please let me miscarry. And I went for a private scan the next day, and Poor young girl. She just thought I was there for a happy scan because I wanted to see my baby, although I had told her that what happened the day before. And she scanned me and she said, I'm just going to get my colleague. He's really experienced. And Lex just went to pieces. And I said, just please hold it together. Okay, I just need you to hold it together. And this guy came in and scanned me. And he was scanning me for about 20 minutes in silence, which felt like forever. And he was really violently shaking my stomach. And I now know why. It's because Jesse was glued to the top of my, the sack. He was glued, and he was trying to shake him away. And he said, I just can't get him to move. And his umbilical cord was so small. He was literally glued by his stomach to the top. And he put his hand on my leg and he said, I'm going to have to give you this black and white. He said, I've sat where your husband is now. And I've been the excited father in a scan. And I've sat where I am. And I've given horrific news. And I'm afraid this is the worst news I can give you. And he said, your baby's incompatible with life. And I'll never forget, I went to pay for my scan. And he said, you're not paying. He said, I'm not delivering that news to you and then taking a penny off of you. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that tiny act of kindness in, my darkest day. And I went home and I cuddled Jax tighter than I've ever had before. And I kept pointing to my belly and saying, brother, brother. And I just thought, how the hell am I going to navigate this one? And I sat up Googling for 3 hours. And there had never been a known born survivor to survive with what Jesse had. It was non-genetic. It's literally a blip. So when we start as two halves and we join, there had been a second of a blip in that development, and his body hadn't closed, and every organ apart from his heart had been outside. His leg was bent up behind his back, and he had tumors on the base of his spine. I mean, he was so poorly. He was so poorly, and I wanted it to be over for him. I wanted to stay pregnant so much, and part of me thought, maybe if I give birth, I can just have a few minutes with him. But they told me that wouldn't happen, so I couldn't continue the pregnancy, not with my mental health, not for Jax. I couldn't let Jesse grow anymore, knowing what pain he was going to be in. I just couldn't do it. So, yeah, I had a termination. It was, that's as bad as you can imagine.
The bit that struck me when when we've obviously talked about this and had this conversation before is that when you would, I don't think you made the decision personally, for what it's worth, to end your son's life. I don't think you did. I think that decision was totally taken out of your hands. But the fact that I'm really sorry, I feel like a bit selfish crying, but when you had to go and have that horrendous procedure done, they wanted to do that in an abortion clinic, didn't they?
They did. So I booked it in myself in an abortion clinic in Brixton. And I called them and I said, but I need to get the baby's body back to St. Thomas's. I have to have genetic testing. And the woman was so cheerful on the phone. She's like, all right, 1 second. I'll just check how we can do that for you. And she came back and she said, oh, I've got some good news. You can actually take it away on the day. But don't worry, the box won't be see-through. Oh, and I was like, but I went, oh, okay, oh, that's good. Phew, thank God for that. And then went about trying to book a motorbike courier. I was Googling, how cold does a dead baby's body have to be? My son, how cold does it have to be? How long can it be refrigerated? I was Googling. If I go back to my blooming history and look at what I was Googling that night, but I wasn't crying. I was so like, there's a job to be done. Let's get it done. Lex was in pieces. But I just went into like logistical Zara. I was like, no, this has to be done. Right. So I'm going to this abortion clinic. His body will be in a box that won't be see-through. I'll get his body on the back of a motorbike. It needs to be this temperature. and then they can take him in and dissect him for testing. That was how I was just like thinking. And then I spoke to them and I said, I've got gynae issues. I've had many laparoscopies for endo. I had a troublesome birth. What happens if you experience any difficulty when you're doing the procedure? And she said, oh, we'll blue light you to the nearest hospital. And I was thinking, this doesn't feel good to have this done not in a hospital. It doesn't feel safe to me with my history.
And it wasn't an abortion though either. It wasn't.
I know.
Different.
But I don't understand it. Zara, why didn't the hospital whose care you was under when that horrific news was delivered, at what point did they take care of you? And
they told me I could give birth. I could do that on the Monday. I could have done that in 3 days. And I said I had a horrific birth myself. You only told me a couple of weeks ago I'd need a cesarean. And even though I know Jessie wouldn't be the size of a fully grown baby, mentally, I told myself I can't go back and give birth.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, when my nephew Henry was born sleeping, I can't be in a room and give birth and hear a baby not cry. I can't do that again. I've done that and it's horrendous. I can't, this isn't an option for me. And it was like, okay, well, here's the leaflet. Literally, that's what it was like. And it's still like that today. I've had women message me during lockdown and they've had to travel for miles to an abortion clinic. Their husbands aren't allowed anywhere near the building, not allowed in, not allowed with them in recovery. It is barbaric.
Busted.
It's barbaric.
Busted.
It just adds an extra layer of trauma to what's already an unbelievably traumatic time.
And you're both parents. You both make a baby together. Like that, I just can't get my head around that. Like the COVID thing as well. Like I don't agree with it. I don't agree with that. I don't care who I disappoint or upset when I say that. It's not fair.
No, it's not at all.
I can't believe that sonographer, the woman that did it the first time, said he looks great. I can't believe that woman did that. She blatantly lied, and I can't believe someone would do that out of being a coward. That's it.
I think what had happened is after that scan, I think she'd gone to try and find a consultant to break the news to me, couldn't find one, and thought, okay, I've got to do this myself. That's what I've been told.
Maybe it was a new area of experience for her. Maybe she'd never been through that before. That's all.
I know.
Panic.
Yeah. Like, I can't imagine anyone would in their right mind mean to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as everything that we say, then we say that things aren't said properly. And I think sometimes it's just accidental, and then sometimes things are more lapsy-daisy and things because things become a habit. And I mean, I can't even imagine having to do that job either. Like, I always think it'd be such a beautiful job to be a midwife, but then you've got this harrowing, painful
that side of it. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if bedside care and communication is part of the nursing medical curriculum. Do you know what I mean? I just think that I don't know, because I'm not a medical person, but clearly from what we've heard today, these are pure examples of people that know their job but don't know how to care. Yeah,
definitely. You know? And I wish I could say, I've not heard anyone else go through this. You're hearing it all the time, especially around women giving birth. The language used, Jessie was the baby, and within 1 second he was the fetus. And that is so wrong. 2 minutes ago he was my son that we were all calling Jessie, and now you're calling him the fetus.
Yeah, I'd have a real problem with that.
Yeah. And remains, like, there's all pregnancy remain after, I've had 3 miscarriages since we lost Jessie. And it's always been, they send me home with a pot and they say, when you miscarry, can you put it in the pot and bring the remains to the hospital to be tested?
When you bring your baby with you would be so much more of even again, validation, because not remains, it's your baby, it's your son.
Zara, have you reached out to like the, medical associations?
So I had a big chat with PALS, which is the patient Association liaison service about the care I received from day dot. I mean, I can't even tell you the whole end of, it's not the end of my story, but the last bit of the puzzle is that I had a transfer in September and I decided to have a double transfer. And on the day of transfer, it had transpired they'd lost one of my embryos 5 years ago when they were freezing it. So that was great. And that really, they didn't know. So I got my 2 new embryos over to the Evewell clinic and they called me on the morning, and I knew, you know, we all know that during the thawing process, it's likely what some may not survive. And they said, they've lost an embryo. And I just thought they meant it had perished. And then I got there to the clinic and they said, we haven't really heard of this before. And I said, oh, I thought it was, you know, like a 30% chance. And they said, no, there was no embryo in that vial. And 3 of us checked it and there was no embryo in there. And I said, well, what happened? And they said, well, they must have dropped it, misplaced it when they were putting it in there.
Oh my.
And I felt really sad at that because I was like, that one didn't even get the chance. That could have been the baby.
And there is a whole thing.
Didn't even get the chance.
About embryos, because I feel they are your babies. And that's how I feel. Like that's really how, and I know people that haven't struggled with infertility, that haven't had IVF, but when you have a baby naturally, or you make a baby naturally, whether like if you have an real early, like you say, you tested really early and it was pregnant, and then next time you tested a couple of weeks later, it wasn't, that's your embryo, and that's your pregnancy, and that's your right to grieve that. And these embryos, we have to jump through burning hoops to make. And in your case, making those embryos nearly killed you on several occasions. You lost your son, and there's a whole grieving thing around that. Like that I hold quite personally, like myself.
I asked if I could bring my embryos home because they reached the 10-year limit this year, and I asked if I could bring them home. I said, I know I can't see them, but I would know that they're in a little box. And they said no, and then they said, right, well, we're going to discard them. And I was like, you can't discard them. I was like,
they're mine.
Let me give it to research or something. Let me do something else. And they went, you needed to have told us a long time before.
I hate that, because what you go through, your views might be so different in 10 years.
So they said, they literally went, right, okay, well, we're going to discard them on Tuesday.
I hate that word.
So what did they do with them?
Oh, they literally chuck them away.
Why couldn't they let you do that?
It's crazy.
That makes me angry, though. That makes me angry.
So hard for those. I worked damn hard, and I saw them as little babies.
Mm-hmm. They are your little babies, and again, they nearly killed you too, getting those little babies. Yeah. There is so much still so wrong with this whole sector industry of babies and trying to conceive, whether it be baby loss, whether it be IVF, infertility. There's still so much work to be done.
Huge. And I was really starting to make some leeway with fighting to get terminations in hospitals, get that continuity of care, and then COVID struck, and obviously because it's not vital, it's just been pushed so far down the line. But that's what I'd love to see eventually, is that for, you know, the 5,500 babies who do lose their lives for a termination for medical reasons a year, I would want them to go out with dignity.
Yeah, and when we say because it's not vital, well, who made that decision? Because I'd say it's pretty frigging vital, actually.
Yeah, the knock-on effect is huge. You know, we're so big on mental health now, and to not realise what damage that does to mental health is just ignorance.
This is it. And again, it ties in with IVF and infertility and baby loss. You can't experience any of these things without experiencing an impact on your mental health. You can't.
It's unfortunate that IVF and trying for a baby is treated though as a medical type thing. Your mental health and your emotional well-being, your actual state of mind is secondary to what's happening medically, isn't it? And that's why it's overlooked.
I know the Evewell clinic, and I'm sure others do this, that before you have a transfer, they get you in with a therapist to just see how you're doing. They're so big on that side because they're like, it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. The Eve Well. They're incredible. I mean, they are a fertility and a gynecological clinic. And again, why doesn't that exist? So they will always look to see if they can treat you gynecologically first, and then you won't bloody need IVF.
And that is another subject, isn't it? There is so many people that are just pushed through when there's still budgets in funding in certain areas. My mum always says to me, they didn't do any investigations for you before they gave you the IVF with Layla. And they really didn't. It was, I mean, I was at a pretty piss poor, sorry, I tried to hold it back, doctor surgery at the time. And there was just, I'm sure there was just room in the budget. And it was just, you know what? And I remember them saying that, you're young, healthy couple, it's unexplained infertility. Like, we see no reason why you wouldn't have good success rates at our clinic. So we were just a number. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a statistic to them.
So, Zara, your last...
Sorry, it just goes back to the language, doesn't it? It's the language that they use that makes a massive difference.
That costs nothing to change. That costs nothing. That's free to change.
Yeah. I remember when I was in labour for 12 hours and ended up having to have an emergency section. I mean, it's nothing compared to what you went through. But I remember the doctor saying that they had to put a reason for why I was having a section, and the medical term that they had to use was poor maternal effort. And that really got to me because I thought,
wow,
I've tried. I've really frigging tried. A section is
my God.
Who turns up and thinks, nah, swerve this childbirth today. I can't be asked for that.
Is shocking.
Yeah, I would rather have an emergency section and contract sepsis because I can't be asked to push the baby out, is what they were saying.
They're lazy.
Wow.
You're lazy.
Poor maternal effort.
Yeah, too posh to push, Jodie.
Yeah.
Lazy girl.
Poor maternal effort was the term. I just think it's disgraceful.
That is. We need to get a list of things that are said, and we need to create some kind of petition.
It'd be interesting to know who comes up with these types of terms, though, wouldn't it?
And who deems it socially acceptable? Yeah,
was it a woman saying that? Maybe.
When I was told I had to discard my embryos. Do you know? I can't remember the word now. But I asked on Instagram. I asked people to give me alternative words. And do you know, I cannot, literally, I have flatlined. But we came up with a word, and I emailed clinics. And I said, can you change the terminology, please? And some of the clinics came back and they were like, absolutely, yes. And I know one of the lister, James Nicopolis, who's just an amazing, he was like, absolutely. He goes, I will go out of my way to to change the dialogue, to change.
Wow.
You know.
Well done, you, Sara.
Yeah, we need to campaign this, ladies. We need to really do something about this and see if we can.
You know what he said though?
Pay attention.
What's difficult is you have to be so clear, because we were coming up with words like, you know, let go, or you know, there were words that sounded lovely. He's like, yeah, but that doesn't tell you what's actually happening to it.
Yeah.
And legally, if you say you're just going to let them go, what does that mean? You're putting them in a drawer somewhere, or it has to be tight in terms of what it means. It's harder than you know.
I get that, but there also still needs to be an element of emotion and sensitivity around any of these things that have said, like this geriatric parents and stuff like that. That's disgusting. That literally grates me, like on a whole, cooks my goose on a different level.
Word anyway, even for a geriatric.
Yeah. It's just, I had to Google it. I was like, what? It doesn't even sound like a nice word. I don't even know what it meant. And I had to Google it, and I was like, that is disgraceful. It's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, it's poor, really poor.
I mean, Sara, you're working really closely with Tommy's now, aren't you? Do you want to talk? Just tell us. I know we've had Johnny for an hour and 15 minutes, and I knew this was going to go. This was going to be a long one today. But I know that you're working really closely with Tommy's and doing amazing things. So just finish up by letting us know where
firstly, anyone that's watching this is experiencing anything that you've gone through and what they're doing.
So I started working with Tommy's, Petals and Arc after we lost Jessie, because there was no care or help or support for TFMR, Termination for Medical Reasons. And they started a Break the Silence campaign, which is just incorporating that loss, that type of loss within everything that they do, which was so needed. And, you know, it should have happened ages ago, but anyway. And then recently, Tommy's have been working on some incredible research around miscarriage. So, as I said, I've had 3 miscarriages since we lost Jessie. And at my old clinic, she just said to me, it's a numbers game, try again. I wasn't looked into, had no tests. I went and paid £2,500 myself to go and have every test going. Because I was like, that's not an answer. That's not, you know, I've got 2 embryos left. Only had 1, didn't know that. And I need an answer before I go and transfer them. And I went and did all the tests, and the research that Tommy's had printed last week is just mind-blowing. And they want every woman to have support and care and be looked into after every single miscarriage. Where the hell did this no tests before 3 miscarriages rule comes in? I mean, to be told, go away, lose another baby, and then we'll help you. Like, are you serious? No, that's not okay anymore. That's not okay. Never was. But we now, as women who have a louder voice than before, we won't put up with that anymore. Yeah. And it's tough that we have to resort to paying, and not everyone can afford to. You know, some of these tests cost pennies, some cost thousands. And it's like, you will only give yourself the test you can afford. Well, that's not right. Give us them all across the board. Give us them all. And it's things like the simple thyroid test. So normally you'll get the standard, just, you know, the standard test. And I had my thyroid peroxidase antibodies tested, which is linked to miscarriage. When I had that tested, which was just a very simple, cheap blood test, they were raised beyond belief. So my new clinic, like, well, no wonder you keep miscarrying. Now, why wasn't that tested? Why did I lose 2 of my babies, 3 of my babies before you've just told me this? I would have paid anything for that test, and to have, you know, it's simple thyroxine medication that so many women are on. That's what it is. But it's being aware of any issue before you have to lose again and again and again.
Do you know what? We've just put on IVF Babble a checklist, and it's got all the tests.
Amazing.
And so we say to people, or we're going to start saying this week, print that checklist off and sit in front of your doctor.
Yeah.
And before you do anything, say, right, just want to make sure, have I had this? Yeah, tick, 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 tick.
Amazing. Because you haven't got a clue.
No. You haven't. And the big one is the progesterone. The progesterone is so cheap. It's so simple. You know, people who haven't had fertility issues or who haven't had,
isn't it?
It's fundamental. So I said this to my consultant. She would not test me for progesterone. She said, it's crap. If you're pregnant, your body will give you the progesterone you need. So I went and tested myself the day of a transfer. My progesterone was 24. Now, most clinics won't transfer unless you're like, you know, 70, 80, 90, 100. And I called her. She was pissed off that I'd been behind her back to get a blood test. She was like angry. And then I said to her, I want more progesterone. And I argued and argued and argued. And in the end, she did give me it. But it was very like, oh, you know, just
but
like.
Why would she not? It's not going to hurt you.
I
think she wanted to prove
every
the point.
Clinic tested progesterone and estrogen.
No, not progesterone. No. So, I mean, the Eve Well tested.
No, you are kidding.
No. Many don't, Sara. It's unbelievable because it's so
Kirsty
fundamental.
Me saying last week when Kirsty was on, and she said they didn't want to test her progesterone. And she'd had like 11 miscarriages, and they've never once thought, let's check that this girl's producing enough progesterone. Just a couple of like pessaries that she could have taken, 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. Wow. Why would you give it with IVF if everyone so naturally produces it? As soon as that embryo is implanted in the lining, why'd you give it?
Why'd you give it for the first 3 months? Not even just before.
I didn't know that. Because I wrote some questions and sent them off to a clinic the other day because I wanted to learn more about the endometrium, the lining and the thickness. And I wrote, in my questioning, and I put, when do you test the progesterone? What happens if levels are too low? What happens if levels are too high? Like, assuming, I'm waiting for the answers, but assuming that's what was done.
And I was, I'm going to say it because they gave me my son, they gave me Jesse, but they gave me a hell of a lot of mistreatment, and they are still overstimulating people of what I'm being told. I was at Guy's clinic, and they are one of the best. They are so renowned. Guys in St. Thomas are held in such high esteem. And yet they are saying, two of the consultants at least are saying, progesterone is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. And so I spoke to Tommy's about it, and I said, look, my consultant's saying this. I need help. I was off my head on IVF drugs. You know how that makes you, Jade, when you're just like, I need help. And they said to me,
don't faze me.
They said to me, print off our research, literally put it on the table. And I did that. And I was like, I am paying for this. I'm paying for this cycle, and I am fighting for you to give me bum bullets, which is what we call progesterone in the game. I'm fighting.
I'm so shocked.
I know.
I'm using that word, honest. I'm using that word.
Yeah, Jodie's going to ride that wave.
Give me more bum bullets. But it's just so simple. It's so simple. But can you imagine the amount of babies who may have been saved by that tiny bit of progesterone?
That's sad, isn't it? That is a real sad reflective thought. That is
unbelievable.
Zara, you said earlier, right at the start, that if I was to ever have any more transfers, which I'm not.
Yeah.
So that's it now.
I don't have any embryos. I don't have anything to transfer.
Would you ever do it again? A fresh cycle of it again?
I mean, Jesus, Dyson with death. No.
I just thought now you know more, like now, because obviously I wouldn't want to be your doctor and argue with you. Hell no. So you're, like you say, like your 2021 Zara would say give so much different advice to 2015 Zara. I would ask questions, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Don't go home from that clinic thinking, I bloody wish I'd have asked that question that I was too scared to ask. They've heard it all before. You will not be the most pain in the ass patient they've got. Just ask all the questions. Do your research. If you can't, Google doesn't throw up much. Don't really go to Dr. Google. Ask any of us. We've all been there. We've been through it. Ask people who have first-hand experience. What should I ask? My doctor has said this. What does that mean? Like, you can become so well equipped with knowledge, and knowledge is power. And the minute you have that knowledge, you will feel you've got a tiny bit more control. You have no control with IVF at all. You can be told your collection is on Friday, they scan you on Thursday, and then it's on the Monday, and you've planned childcare. You have no control. So if there's any areas you can feel in control with, your diet, don't get obsessive because I think that's counterproductive, but your diet, tiny bit of nice exercise, bit of gentle yoga, a bit of meditation, anything you can do that just keeps you feeling tiny bit in control, I think would help. I wish I'd have known that. I obsessed about everything I ate and drank, and once had a coffee and thought that's why Jax is probably not going to survive. Things like that. And yeah, just equip yourself. I mean, I wouldn't have transferred, but if I didn't have transferred, would I ever have Jax today? I can't. And I'd have gone through what I went through a million times if it meant I could have brought Jax home and Jessie. I would have given anything to bring Jessie home. Anything. But, sometimes you're dealt just a really crap hand. But if I can talk about what I've been through and help others, then I don't feel what I went through was in vain. I don't feel he died for nothing. I feel he died, but he's raising awareness. And I do feel that. I feel like when we get awareness, and when I went on to Loose Women, I felt that was a real kind of victory for him. I was like, you should be proud, kid. Oh. And I bet you we will be. Of you. Yeah. I don't know anyone that could survive the turmoil that you've been through, babe. And I think for everyone, that I think we're all just a bit in awe of you today.
Oh, stop. You know, do you know what I wish? I hope no one knows what happens after we leave here, do we? But if we do get to meet people up there, I'd just love it to go, I was proud of you, Mum. I'd love that. I really would. And I'd have given anything to give him one cuddle. That's all I would have wished for, just one cuddle. But, you know, that's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just have to keep on moving forward.
Sara, thank you so much.
Sara, you and him making changes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Together, you know, together.
Yeah.
You're working together.
Yeah, we're a good team.
The most incredible team, and I totally believe, for what it's worth, that you will see him again one day.
God, I wish. I just want to know what he looks like.
You have made this struggle for so many other people just a little bit more painless, or just a little bit more supported, and like, you know what it felt to have the total opposite. So
yeah, I know what it feels like to not have a hand to hold, and it's bloody scary. It's scary, but you know.
Hun, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Zara, I really just want to cuddle you.
Oh, COVID wasn't here. When COVID's not here, let's all meet up and we'll have a group hug.
Yeah.
We will meet up soon when COVID is gone, and there's so much more work to do, and it just gives me so much hope and encouragement that, like, women like you and these women that we get to speak to all the time, and these people, not just women, that the future is gonna, we're every day chipping away at it and just creating a better future for anyone that's dealing with trying to conceive or baby loss. So
well done to you lot for you know, creating this platform that women can feel they can come on and talk openly and not be judged. I mean, it's so important. Yeah.
Shall we get together and get a list of helplines and get them up on our socials, just in case anyone's affected by anything they've seen today? They know where to reach out to immediately.
Yeah, I'll send some over to you.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Right, ladies, I will let you go. We've been in an hour and a half, and I feel like I just need a little bath now and a little lie down.
I feel I need a wine.
wine. Thank you so much, and I will see the rest of you back here next Tuesday at 11. Zara, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Take care.